In today's video, we're going to be doing part two of the review, the rundown, whatever you want to call it, of the Great Big Shatterpoint 2025 balance update. If you haven't seen part one, I'll put the link in the description. Part one, we cover the Separatists, the Republic, as well as the Scum. Here in part two, we're going to be covering the Galactic Empire and the Rebel Alliance. Let's go. So we're going to start with Darth Vader Jedi Hunter. Darth Vader Jedi Hunter only really received one minor change. Okay, the changes to the ability "Your hatred makes you powerful." So it used to allow you, whenever an allied character made a melee attack as part of a combat action, after choosing the target, the attacking unit may suffer 2 damage. If it does, they add 3 dice to the attack roll. Powerful ability. Now you have to have the Republic tag or the Empire tag in order to do that, essentially. So what they've done here is they've stopped people from running Darth Vader in any list, right? So for example, it used to be quite popular at one point months ago in the meta to run Darth Vader Jedi Hunter with General Grievous from the prequel films. 2 characters that never existed at the same time, that never would have met, but obviously Shatterpoint has a very permissive list building system, and the general rule in Shatterpoint is that you are rewarded with bonus abilities for making a list that's thematic and appropriate, but the game rules don't forbid you from making lists that are thematically inappropriate. The fact that Vader Jedi Hunter didn't, until this moment, require for any of his outgoing abilities any particular tag, meant that you could just drop him into any list and make what is called in Shatterpoint circles a good stuff list, right? A good stuff list is where instead of trying to exploit any particular tag-based synergy or ability, you're just taking units that are individually powerful and fitting them together into a list. So that's been turned off. So if you were using Darth Vader Jedi Hunter in a lore-appropriate way, with either your Empire collection or your Galactic Republic collection, nothing has changed for you. Okay, I really thought they might remove Galactic Republic from Vader 1 because when he came out, he was the first Empire miniature released, I think. Maybe it was the Grand Inquisitor box, but it was one of those two, right? And there really wasn't anywhere that you could use him particularly well outside of Galactic Republic. But I've said this before. I said this in my "Do they have a problem with eras" video. Vader having Galactic Republic didn't really make sense, but AMG want to keep it. It's going to stay. It's going to be with us forever. He's going to continue casting his shadow over Republic list building. But that's the decision the company's made. They want you to be able to tell those stories with Darth Vader, with Rex, with the 501st, if that's what you want to do. So that's cool. He still works in those lists, and he also still works perfectly well in pure Empire lists. The second and I think only other the only other Empire primary to get a rework is the Grand Inquisitor. Now the Grand Inquisitor has a pretty massive rework, which is why the screen is pretty full. So 3 of his abilities are changed, right? First of all, he has an ability Secrets Uncovered. This costs 2 force. Choose an active. So originally, this is what it said: choose an active objective within 5 that's controlled by an opposing player. Remove the opposing player's control token from the chosen objective. They've simply got rid of the range limitation. So now you can choose an active objective anywhere on the table controlled by an opposing player and remove the opposing player's control token from the chosen objective. So what this means is if you are playing against Grand Inquisitor, you might have a backline point, right, as is often the way, and you go, well, I've secured that point. I want to move my figures up the field. I want to have them do stuff. Grand Inquisitor can just stop you controlling that point for a spend of 2 force. Now, 2 force is quite a lot, but as we'll see in a minute, he's going to be generating more force for you over time. So I think this is a really powerful ability. It's one of those abilities, as often happens in games, where it can assert its power without ever being used. Because what you could do, your opponent's about to move off a back point and do something with a character, and you say, I don't want to gotcha you. I have got this ability, Secrets Uncovered, so if you do that, and I happen to get Grand Inquisitor, I can spend 2 force and take your thing off that point. And actually, there's an element of poker there, isn't there? Because how likely are you to get Grand Inquisitor? Where is he in your deck? Where's the Shatterpoint card? Has he already done? Has he already been and gone? And generally reminding your opponent of potential gotchas in any game is a positive thing, but you can actually use it to kind of exert the influence, I guess, of Secrets Uncovered, without having to necessarily spend the 2 force and have your opponent hold back a support that maybe they could be doing something else with somewhere else on the field. The second ability that's been changed is the temple records are quite complete. So this used to be when a character in this unit is targeted with a melee attack by an enemy force user character, this unit may use this ability. The unit may flip its stance card and the defender adds 2 dice to the defense roll. Now it says when they're targeted in a melee attack, you can use the ability to change your stance. If it's a force user, add 2 dice to the defense roll. I don't think it's going to come up often that you want to spend a force to change your stance card, but it's worth saying that, and it's not even totally clear to me which stance is the better one to be in for defensive purposes, because as you can see, if you look down the page, they've made it constructively confusing. It used to be definitely you wanted to be in Gemso for defense because you've got the 6 dice melee defense and you've got the much better utility table. That's not what it's called, but the table, right? However, expertise table, that's the word I was looking for. However, they've changed it so the melee defense on Form 2 is higher, goes up to 6, and the melee defense on Gemso goes down to 5, but they've kept the expertise tables the same, so it's not clear to me how often you're going to be spending a force to flip your card. This doesn't feel like a very impactful change, but I do appreciate what they're trying to do here, and we'll see this more with the next ability. They're trying to make it so the Grand Inquisitor can do something when he doesn't face a force user on the opposing team. The Inquisitor, if you've ever played Warhammer, he kind of has the Grey Knights problem, right? So the Grey Knights in Warhammer 40k are this organization who hunt demons, and they have a lot of special rules at various iterations of their rule set, which is like, and you can do this against demons, and do that against demons, and this against demons, and then you rock up for your game of 40k with a Grey Knights army, and you're facing orcs, and at various times in iterations of the rules, huge sections of your special rules just don't do anything. And so it's the same here. The Inquisition in Star Wars are designed, basically, their purpose is, for those of you that aren't aware of this part of the lore, their purpose is after the creation of the Galactic Empire, when Palpatine comes out from the shadows and goes, yeah, I'm an emperor now. By the way, the Jedi are treasonous, right? The Inquisitors are the guys that go out throughout the Star Wars universe, and they're hunting down specifically the Jedi that were not easily killed because they didn't happen to be with the clone armies when Order 66 went out, as you saw in Revenge of the Sith, or they didn't happen to be in the Jedi Temple when Anakin, then Darth Vader, turned up and killed everyone in the temple. So when you have to, but this being a war game, right? Someone turns up with their Inquisitors, and then, especially if you're not playing the Premier format, if you're just playing the Showdown format where everyone just brings their fixed list, and then they come into something like Bounty Hunters, You know, so like the Mandalorian and the Armorer with some with some Mandalorians, or bounty hunters with Mandalorian and Cad Bane with some bounty hunters, or Cassian Andor, Princess Leia, right? There's loads of lists now, which wasn't the case when this box first came out, right? When the game was very focused on that Clone Wars kind of era, this is one of the first releases to kind of push away from the Clone Wars era. Most of the things in the game when this came out, most of the sort of other lists were going to have, you know, a Force user, at least one, usually two, occasionally three, in the army. And as that's, you know, you got characters like Han Solo, right? You got characters like General Veers. You got characters like Director Krennic. There's loads of them. You got now loads and loads of characters and loads of lists where there's no Force users. So it's giving them a chance to do something. But I don't think this is a good ability still. It's been slightly improved, but but I don't think paying a Force to flip your stance card is that useful. But it still has that benefit where if you are finding a Force user, and they are popular, right, Star Wars lightsabers, then you get to have those 2 dice, and then it becomes a really good ability. A Force for 2 extra defense dice is pretty good. And then we go on to his identity. Clearly, you were a poor student, and it's kind of a similar story to the previous one, and a lot of what I've just said about Force users applies, but they've also broadened it out a little bit more, right? So it used to be when an allied Inquisitorius character wounds an enemy unit, then when the effect is resolved, one Inquisitorius character may heal, and if the wounded unit was a Force user, refresh 2 Force. So they've changed this, but they've changed it in more than one way. So the one that I've kind of foreshadowed, you now, whenever you wound a character, you get a Force, right? And if it's an Inquisitorius character, you get a second Force. Sorry, if it's a Force user, you get a second Force. But the other big change they've made is that it's now whenever an allied Galactic Empire character wounds the enemy unit. So even if you're just it's now actually, I think, quite compelling to put the Grand Inquisitor in. You can drop him in any Empire list where you are feeling Force light, okay? And you get a really good ability in Sequence Uncovered. He's decent in combat, and then you just get, whenever anything in your army wounds anything, you get a Force, okay? And then it goes on to say one Inquisitorius character may heal. Remember, the Grand Inquisitor himself is an Inquisitorius character, so even if he's the only one in your list, you're still getting some benefit from this. And so now you're essentially Cad Bane, right? Because that's what Cad Bane does. Whenever you wound someone with Cad, you refresh a Force and you can heal Cad, right? And so you essentially get that mechanic. And then the second heal and the second Force, they're then gated behind it being a Force user. A much better ability, right? Really opens the Grand Inquisitor out into just being sort of splashed into other lists, right? As well as potentially running him in that all Inquisitor list where everybody is generating 2 Force all the time. I think that's pretty cool. And then we can look at the changes on his card. I'm not so sure what they were trying to achieve with these. I think one of the things they seem to have been trying to grapple with is the idea that people were just living in one stance or another. And you've seen this a little bit. They want to try and make both stances viable. So all they've done is they've turned down the melee defense on Form 2. They've turned up the melee defense dice on Form 2. They've turned down the melee defense dice on Form 5. So now neither of them is actually the obvious choice for defending, okay? And then what they've done is they've tried to turn Form 5 into, and you sort of see this with characters like Count Dooku, they've tried to turn Form 5 into like, okay, this is your ranged side, okay? This is your ranged side, so you now got more dice. It used to definitely not be a ranged side because you actually had less ranged dice on this side, but now they've got like Form 5's ranged side. You got 6 dice, and we're going to really beef up that expertise tree. We're going to put some dashes in there and things like that. So you're very much, I think, wanting to deploy Grand Inquisitor in Form 5, in the hopes that you sort of, if they move someone up, you can then move up. If you draw Grand Inquisitor, you can do a thrown lightsaber attack. You can use that. You can hopefully get some of the dashes in the expertise there, or there's that repo on 2 in the tree there, and really get the Grand Inquisitor up, and mixing things up. And then I don't know what you think about the defense side. I'd probably be tempted to leave him here for his defense. Yes, he gets 1 less dice now, but that adaptive fighter expertise table is really good. And then if you want to then make melee attacks, you can go back to that's when you're gonna swap to Form 2 when you're on your next turn and you're wanting to make a melee attack, because that's when you're gonna get a 7 dice attack. That's when you're gonna get a much better melee offensive expertise table. Unless you really want shoves, and then you're gonna stay on Form 5 because you get the shove on 1. So it's much more of an internal decision, right? But if you're gonna try and kill something, you want to be on Form 2. So yeah, I think it's much more of a decision. I think it's much cooler. So that's Grand Inquisitor, real glow up. Probably the single most exciting thing, I think, for Empire players within this update. Okay, now Third Sister. So Third Sister is Inquisitorius Secondary. Okay, and she wasn't very popular. She's not very well used, despite being like the main viewpoint Inquisitor that we see in the Obi-Wan show, right? Reva, right? Third Sister, same person, 2 names for the same person. So she's got quite a suite of buffs. Okay, so first of all, she's gained a wound from 8 to 9, which is pretty good. Yeah. Call the Hunt has changed. So Call the Hunt used to choose an allied Inquisitorius supporting character within 4. The chosen character may dash or make a 5 dice attack. Okay. And they've made this better in 3 ways. Number 1, it's now free. There's no force requirement. So until you're taking a wound, it doesn't cost any force. Number 2, it doesn't have a range requirement. So you're getting to do it to one of your Inquisitorius supports, if you've taken both of them, either of them, anywhere on the table. And number 3, they get to dash and make a 5 dice attack rather than or make a 5 dice attack. So, in addition to whatever else she's doing, she's Kalani for Inquisitors. Well, no, more accurately, she's Kraken for Inquisitors. That's pretty good, right? And then she has even more stuff, okay? So she has a reaction, your fear betrays you. This also used to cost a force, and now it doesn't cost a force anymore. That's pretty good, okay? And then it used to be when a character in this unit makes a melee attack as part of a combat action, before dice are rolled, it can use the ability remove 1 or more conditions from the defender, add 2 dice to the attack for each condition was removed. So it was a kind of a you got to have conditions to remove, and if you cure some of their conditions, you get more attack dice. A very kind of weird that you spend a force, you get a bit better, but you heal them a little bit. A very wishy-washy ability. Now it's free, okay. It doesn't have to be a melee attack, which is relevant, okay. Sorry, it's irrelevant because they haven't given this one a ranged attack, but they did take away the bit of verbiage that said it had to be a melee attack for whatever reason. But it's free, and then instead of adding 2 dice for each condition you remove, you instead can re-roll a number of dice in the attack roll up to the number of active objectives controlled by the opposing player. So it's far more. It still retains that character of being a bit variable, so it's more useful to you if your opponent's doing well, and it's less useful to you if you're doing well. But it loses that ability of actively helping your opponent, right? It loses that ability of going, well, the problem with the original version is that you might spend a force, you might remove like a strain and a pin, right? And then those 2 extra dice might roll. Those 4 extra dice might, technically they might all 4 of them roll misses, and so it was a tough one. Whereas now it's always, and it's free, so it's always worth a punt. Even if it's just getting you like 1 reroll because you're doing really well in the game and they've only got 1 point, it's always worth a point because it's a punt because it's free. Okay. She's also gained an extra 2 points in melee defense, going up to melee defense 6. Okay, she's gained on her melee defense expertise has been vastly improved. So it's now 1 to 2 is 2 blocks, and instead of it being 4 up to get to the next tier, it's 3 up to get to the next tier. And instead of it being 2 blocks and a crit to hit, it's 2 blocks and a crit all the way down to a miss. Okay, and at the same time, Spinning Lightsaber has been buffed, right? So it's now got a crit and a damage on 1 to 2 instead of a hit and damage, okay? And it's got 2 crits, 2 damage on 4 plus now rather than 5 plus instead of a crit, 2 hits and 1 damage, which is pretty good. They've also changed the push on 3 to a pin, which sounds like a pin and a second damage, which sounds like a nerf, right? But what it actually has done is made her tree more interesting. Because if you look at the bottom path, she already had, like originally she had a push and a push and a damage on 3 on both sides, and so even though you're looking at 4 things, you're basically only choosing between, well, do I want an extra damage or do I want an expose, right? Am I gonna kill him with the extra damage or do I want to go and get the expose? Whereas now you've got more of a choice. Both paths are giving you 3 damage. So now you're choosing with which path you go down. It's like, okay, do I want the expose and the pin, or do I need the push, right? Have I got to, bearing in mind there's a push on 1, do I need the push on 2? Am I getting, do I need the push on 3? Am I getting the push on 4? And you can look at your dice and you're making a more interesting and useful decisions. I think that's cool. It's not necessarily a buff or a nerf, but it makes it more interesting, I think. I really like Third Sister now. I think just that buffed Call the Hunt ability, really powerful. Really powerful. And it's free. Very little business being free, I think. There you go. Gideon Hass, the next secondary that's been changed. So I don't really know who Gideon Hask is. I'm familiar with the fact that he's a character from a video game about Star Wars that I haven't played, right? So this is Inferno Squad, so this is Iden Verso, Gideon Hask, technically Del Miro, and then more accurately the Commando Special Ops guys, they're in there as well. And I'd played against Inferno Squad before the nerf once. I got really heavily beaten. It was a tournament. But I was very new, the guy I was playing was very experienced, I was very tired, so I don't hold that up as an example of saying, "Oh, these were clearly broken." They beating me handily does not make something broken, but the chatter in Discords and in the wider community is that yes, indeed, the Inferno Squad box as a construct was pretty broken. And frustratingly, I think for people, this would often get shorthanded into people because people tend to refer to list archetypes by the primary that runs them. People would say, well, Iden's broken, Iden's broken, Iden's broken. And actually, Iden's not been touched, and that's because Iden was never particularly broken. It was the package of the whole box, and it was particularly this one ability that changed. So let's see what they've done. So they have an ability, Defiance will be the death of you. This is a passive, so it never costs any force, no matter how wounded you are, and that hasn't changed. Okay, Defiance will be the death of you. When an allied Galactic Empire character makes an attack as part of a combat action, if the target is within 5 of 1 or more other Galactic Empire scout characters, it adds a damage to the attack roll. Okay, so all you're doing adds a hit rather to the attack roll. All you're doing is getting an extra hit in the attack roll. But it transpires, and AMG have said this themselves, they didn't think they were giving a really powerful ability here. But it transpires that because you can put in an extra damage on primaries, on really powerful characters, just because they're near a scout. It was really altering the maths of Shatterpoint. So they've changed it in a number of ways. Only supporting characters can benefit from it now. So when a supporting character makes an attack as part of a combat action, if the target is within 5 of a character in this unit, the attacking player may change 1 miss to a hit. So it almost does nothing, right? So if a support is within 5 of Hask, it can change a miss to a hit, right? It now makes sense as just a little extra thing that he does, because the main things that he's supposed to do, a long live the Emperor, covert operations, all these things, he just had too much on his card. And yeah, they've taken this particular passive out to the back and shot it. That's true. It now does almost nothing, but it's a fourth ability on a card, and it's a passive and it's free. A couple of other things to note: he technically doesn't have any health. It's obviously the whoever did the layout just didn't put that layer on top of the artwork before exporting it to the PDF. It sucks. I'm sure they'll fix it, right? We have to assume he's 8 health with 2 lives. That's just what we have to assume. But yeah, I think. And this isn't the only change to the Inferno Squad box. The supports have changed a little bit as well. But okay, what I think is interesting is now nobody cares about the scout tag. There was a world where people were like, "Oh, I really hope they get round to bringing out scout troopers, because then the Inferno Squad can be even more powerful, because then I can have some scout troopers and have 2 more scouts on the battlefield, and everybody will always be within 5 of a scout somewhere, right?" So that's no longer a concern. I don't think the Inferno Squad are unplayable now, but it is definitely a significant nerf. And for me, I think that's an absolute win, because it was particularly vexing, I think, having characters that certainly I've never heard of. I've never played this video game, right? And I've consumed all of the Star Wars media on Disney Plus, so it's not like I feel like that's generally where your characters should come from, right? The TV shows, including the animated ones, but the TV shows and films is what people mainly care about. Now, it does mean there's somebody on my Discord that kind of wanted to get into Shatterpoint. They love this video game. It's one of their favorites. They bought this squad, and then they've been put off by the fact that everyone's telling them it's now utterly broken and blah 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 blah. That's no longer the case. So if you are an enjoyer of Inferno Squad, go and rock your Inferno Squad, and nobody will kind of call you rude names, which is always a positive, right? But I don't think we'll see that much of them, especially as my suspicion is a lot of people that were running them were the kind of people that run things because they are the bleeding edge of competitive, and not because there are that many people out there who are Inferno Squad stands, although I'm sure there will be some, right? Fourth sister. So now we're going to the supports, right? So there's 2 inquisitorial supports. Fourth sister has been changed a little bit. So if you've seen my part 1 video where I talked about Asajj Ventress, who's also had a similar change, Fourth sister has been given the same ability. So Fourth sister is now incredibly mobile, because whenever she moves, it's a reposition. Okay, so you can just walk out of combat if you want to and do the full distance. Now this replaces her ability that used to be, when you're wounded by an enemy effect, after the effect resolve, 1 character in this unit may reposition, which is like nothing. So it's gone from nothing to something actually good, which is amazing, which is good. They've given her a ranged attack. Okay, so she's just got a ranged attack, and sure enough, her tree still has a push on 1. So they've given her a ranged attack, which is nice. It's a 7 dice ranged attack with a reasonable expertise tree. Interesting to see dashes on the expertise tree, right? And they've given her a dash as well in her defensive tree, which is pretty cool. It's not a jump, so she's one of these characters that wants to fight on the ground level if she can, right? Because if you get pushed off a point and you've got a dash, you can dash back onto it if it's on the ground level, but if you've been pushed off the side of a bridge, that's less useful. And then she's got an extra little reposition added, an extra square in her tree. So if you want that option there, it's kind of far up the tree for me in terms of the kind of bits of a tree that I try not to look at. Right, I try and look at the first 3-4 boxes max, especially on non-primaries, because you can get yourself frustrated looking at the top end of the tree that you're probably never going to get to. But it is there if you roll them dice and you get there. That's pretty cool as well. I like her. Yeah, she kind of similar to a Sarge Ventress. Obviously not as killy as a Sarge Ventress, although having actually played a Sarge, the main thing a Sarge does is jump onto a point and push people off it, right? Fourth Sister jumps onto a point, you can pull. Pulling people off is less straightforward than pushing people off, but it's still very doable if you just time it right so that you're pulling and then jumping over them to get onto the point. And now you've got the Sarge's mobility type ability, but also, which a Sarge doesn't have, you've got a ranged attack, and you're a support. So I think Fourth Sister's definitely got a place now. I think she's pretty cool. Nobody took her before. We should acknowledge there is always the problem. No matter how good the card looks, one body supports are always kind of a problem, right? Because you can be in less places. I can acknowledge that as well, but I think Fourth Sister's pretty cool. The ISF, the Imperial Special Forces. So these are funny because they're just guys in black fatigues with, as far as I can tell, TIE Fighter hats, but they are from, again, they're from Inferno Squads. They're from the same video game that I've not played. So minor tweaks here. They've given them the Trooper tag. I think this is probably just future-proofing / housekeeping. Doesn't do anything, but it has been added. And then they just swapped around their tree. So now on 4 they have the repo and a damage, and then on 5 they have only 1 damage. So this is relevant because for all I say, don't worry about the top end of the tree. Of course, these are the support that comes in the box with Gideon Hask, who can hand them a reroll, which means that they are, I guess, potentially more likely to get to the top end of their tree. I actually think this is a buff, which is going to sound insane because they've taken away 2 of the potential damage. But they have made it slightly more like you do sometimes go 4 up your tree. They've made it slightly more likely that you're gonna you're gonna grab that repo, and repo is just a really powerful ability. So swings and roundabouts for sure, but I don't think they've been nerfed into the ground. And of course, you got covert operations, so you've got the ability to dash. You've got infiltration, so you can forward deploy. They're a very, very mobile thing, and now they're slightly more able to lean into that mobility, with a loss of guess their absolute top mark damage dealing potential. And as in all things, they don't have a push, which limits how useful that people are going to find them. Right. Dark Troopers. So, Dark Troopers were a horrible unit, and they had a horrible effect on list building for Empire players. And I think, even though this is a significant nerf, I think even the Empire players are going to be happy that the nerf has happened in a way, because there are whole loads of 4-point Galactic Empire supports, right? And they all have different nuances. And Dark Troopers were just the best one, so you always took them. And then if you were trying to play Premier with all Empire, you just got frustrated because you couldn't have Dark Troopers in both lists. Dark Troopers received 2 changes. They lost a wound down to 7 wounds, okay, and then their defensive expertise tree got nerfed into the ground. But it's a support. It has no business having a crit to a hit, or even a crit to a miss. Or you never got to 4+, but now it's a much more sensible, defensive expertise tree for some droids. You know, as a Separatist player myself, I know my droids weren't armored like this, so yeah, why should you be? I think they have yeah, they're definitely taking a hit, but I think you still take them occasionally. They're still the right choice if you want, you know, their abilities, if you want immovable, if you want coordinated fire strain, if you want the extra mobility from the pay a force for a jump, like if you but now you're weighing them up with death troopers and stormtroopers and shore troopers and all the other 4-point things that end in troopers, right? And that's how it should be. That's good internal balance. And then we got the elite squad troopers who, man, I don't understand what they did here and why. They had coordinated fire strain. Coordinated fire strain's really good. Okay, so yes, coordinated fire strain's really good. They got rid of it. The ARFs had to lose their coordinated fire strain. They felt Elite Squad had to lose it as well. They replaced it with supporting fire hunker and/or supporting fire heal. So you can only do one because you can only react once to each trigger. So you can either have hunker or heal, which is interesting. It's interesting to be passing out hunkers. It's a bit like Republic E to sort of be passing out hunkers and having supporting fire and all this sort of stuff. Which makes sense because of what Elite Squad are. They're kind of halfway between a clone trooper and a stormtrooper. In terms of it being like a non-clone, but in very much clone-like tech with clone training, I guess. They've also buffed the dice, so it's now 7 and 5. But they lost coordinated fire strain. I don't really understand these. One person said to me, well, they're trying to just get rid of coordinated fire strain from the game. They decided that their game shouldn't have it, so it's like Kill Team, where they make a decision and then you see that decision ripple out across a whole pile of units. But like the Night Sister Acolytes still have it. They still have coordinated fire strain. So sorry, expose. I keep saying strain when I mean expose. I do of course mean expose. So I don't think it's that, unless they just missed it on the Night Sisters. But I don't. The ARFs were everywhere, and they were a problem, and everybody who played Republic was taking them. I've never read or seen or heard of anybody in the Empire taking Elite Squad, particularly. So I don't know that it was a massive problem. They've been buffed in other ways. Maybe they wanted people to take them, and they buffed them in other ways. And having buffed them in other ways, if they'd kept the coordinated fire exposed, they would have become a massive problem. So they changed that, and now they are like overall buffed. I mean, they have gained an attack dice and an attack dice, and improved their range expertise tree. I just think they're in a weird place. They're not stormtroopers, and I know that the death these guys, the dark troopers, aren't stormtroopers either. I don't know. If you're an Empire player, give me a steer on Elite Squad because they're a bit. I don't know. Did they really need to be touched? So Empire analysis. I've said most of this stuff. I'm just going to go through it. I think Vader, Empire have got treated very fairly. They don't have the problem of the Separatists have. They have received some nerfs, but they've also got stuff to be excited about, right? Darth Vader got off really lightly. So if you are an Empire loyalist that plays Empire and has loads of Empire models, then he didn't change. He only changed those people that were like, "Oh, cool! I'll run like Darth Vader with Grievous and other random stuff in a good stuff list." Dark Troopers are definitely weaker. I'm not trying to like sugarcoat it and gaslight you and say, "Oh no, they're fine. Don't worry about it." But they're not. I don't think they're no longer a no-brainer pick, but I don't think they're a never pick. I think they're just in there in the marketplace of the huge amount of 4-point Empire supports that Empire will have, because in all Star Wars media, there's always a new trooper to be invented and put out, right? So I think that's a good thing. The Imperial Special Forces tweaks, they were tweaks. I don't think there's things known about being that consequential to me. Elite Squad, I get, as I say, it's weird. I just didn't hear anybody using them or ever see of their inclusion in lists, in Discords and things. People talking about things. I don't think they're a big deal. And it's not like it's not like, oh yes, but they needed to continue to nerf Inferno Squad, because now that Inferno Squad no longer cares about the scout tag, if the ISF are no good, you go cool and put Death Troopers with Hask and Iden. Like it doesn't do anything to break the engine either. Yeah. Gideon. Hask. Yeah, sorry, I got confused because, of course, there's two famous Gideons in the Empire, which is sad. Gideon Hask has been nerfed into the ground a little bit. He was the glue that made the Elite Squad overpowered as a team. That needed to happen. I'm fine with it. I'm glad that a thing from the fringes of canon is no longer terrorizing the sort of meta discussions. Weirdly, I'd be fine with it if Vader was overpowered, or if Skywalker was overpowered, or Obi-Wan Kenobi was overpowered, or Count Dooku was overpowered, or any of these big people. But when it's like somebody you've never heard of is utterly dominating the game, it's like, why? So yeah, you got the nerfs. I think the nerfs were all kind of reasonable and justified. But then, and I said the same thing about the Separatists. But unlike the Separatists, I think Empire players have got a big, meaty set of buffs that really excite, right? I think the spoonful of sugar that really helps these nerfs go down is what they've done for the Inquisitors. So you can run all Inquisitors with Vader 1, who has that Inquisitorius tag, and then you're looking for a 3-point secondary. Obviously, you take Bosk, because Bosk's amazing. But memes aside, you probably take Stormtrooper Sergeant, even though he looks a bit lost, because he's Galactic Empire, so if he wounds anything, you're going to get you're going to get some force back, and if you you can move, he can order some of the Inquisitors around as well, I think. But I actually think the better Inquisitorius list might be Vader 3 from the new duel set, and you're running with Cad Bane, because you need, if you're going to run Vader 3 with a 4-point with one of the Inquisitor sports, you need a 9-point primary. And you've got one in faction as Empire, right? You can run Krennic. But Krennic doesn't synergize much with your list. But if you run Cad, well, what does Cad give you? Cad gives you, whenever anybody in that list kills anything, you refresh 2 force. Because Cad gives you, whenever anybody wounds anything, refresh a force. Whenever a bounty hunter wounds anything, refresh 2 force. And he is, of course, a bounty hunter. And then the Grand Inquisitor gives you, whenever a Galactic Empire guy wounds anything, refresh a force. And then if you wound a force user, refresh a second force. So if anything in that list kills a force user, you instantly get 3 force. If anything else wounds anything else at any time, you get 2 force. And then you just spaff that force into, you've got Grand Inquisitor can just use his 2 force ability with Reckless Abandon. You've got Vader 5 with his 2 force ability that you can use with Reckless Abandon. Just try, and I don't know if this is actually going to work, because do you have enough places to spend all this force that you're getting? But I think it could be really cool. So you should try that if you're looking to pick up a Vader 3, right? But you just use your Vader 1, print the rules off the internet. It's probably not fine for tournaments, but it's fine for casual play, isn't it? Yeah. Okay, we're into Rebels. Luke Skywalker, Jedi Knight. Another candidate for main character of Star Wars. He's not really, because he's only really the main character of the 3 films that he's in, mainly. I know he's in the sequels as well, but like, doesn't look happy to be there. He's only got one little buff. So there's nothing wrong with Luke Skywalker. He just doesn't do anything for the rest of your team, which is kind of a liability in a primary. And generally speaking, like, the best primaries are ones that can both bruise a belt and buff. But in general, people prefer a character that's going to buff and support over one that's just going to go like, I'm a bruiser belt, I don't do anything. So they'll treat this ability. So I'm a Jedi like my father before me used to be. While the unit's order card is in the order deck or in reserve, it has immunity to expose. And when it's not in the order deck, it has immunity to pin. So he can never be exposed until after he's activated, and then he can never be pinned. They've changed that, so now it's a bubble to all allied rebels within 5, giving out immunity exposed, and then all allied and then when he's not in the order deck, they all have immunity pin. Interestingly, of course, in both versions of this, when he is in reserve, he benefits from both things, right? So he's not in the order deck or in reserve when he's in reserve, and he's not in the order deck when he's in reserve. So he benefits from both things, which before was like, well, why are you going to hold Luke Skywalker in reserve just to get immunity pin and immunity exposed on Luke Skywalker? It's not that relevant. But now, if you hold him in reserve, you are creating a bubble where you're immune to 2 of the 4 conditions in the game, which seems like it could be quite good. But scuttlebutt on the internet for people that I've never played a game with Luke Skywalker. Scuttlebutt for people on the internet is it's not good and he's still no good and you should still never take him. Goodbye. I think that's probably overblown. And if I get deeper into Rebels and pick up Luke's box, I'd definitely be excited to give him a go. Yeah. Chief Chirper. The card is grey, but he's a rebel. Ewoks are rebels, right? They can become rebels with Princess Leia, Freedom Fighter, and so it seemed more relevant to review them with the rebels than with the scum, right? Even though, they were going to cook and eat Han Solo. Like, people are like, oh, Ewoks, they're sucky. They were going to cook and eat Han Solo until they thought that C-3PO was a deity and stopped their nonsense. Just saying. So, he has an ability, a passive. Mobilize the village. While this unit is not wounded, characters in other allied Ewok units within 4 add a dice to their attack roll. Now, while this unit is not wounded, characters in other Ewok units add a dice to their attack roll. Great. Great. Bright Tree Defender used to be, while this unit is not wounded, when another allied Ewok unit becomes wounded after the effect resolved, roll an attack dice. On a crit or a hit, each character in this unit may reposition and make a 5 dice attack. On a miss or an expertise, the character in the unit may dash and double heal. And again, they've just gotten rid of the while he's not wounded. So, yeah. Whenever you wound an Ewok, you just get to do this nonsense. Pretty good. Pretty good. His melee expertise on his Bright Tree Elder side has been slightly improved. Used to be a hit and a damage, now it's a crit and a damage, that's great. And on his Fury of the Forest side, no changes. So that's Chief Chirper. He's become just a little bit easier to use. He's going to get his cool passive stuff off and help all those other Ewoks. And then we go to Lawgrey, Bright Tree Shaman. So, similar story here, right? He had Protective Wards, which was when it's not wounded. In other characters in other allied Ewok units, add 1 dice. Within 4, add 1 dice to their defense rolls. You still have to be not wounded, but they've made it board wide. So if he's on the table and not wounded, then everything that's an Ewok gets a dice added to its defense roll, which is cool. And then secret ingredients used to be each time an allied Ewok character wounds an enemy unit, roll an attack dice. On a crit or a hit result, refresh force. On a miss or a expertise, each character in the attacking unit may dash. And now it's after the effect resolve, roll an attack die. It's changed, but it's barely changed. Hang on. So each time an allied Ewok character wounds an enemy unit, they've added the text after the effect is resolved to make sure that you understand the timing. Is it just an errata thing? Roll an attack die on a blah. Refresh force on a blah. Each character in the allied unit. Oh, hang on. Yeah. They've changed the word in there from each character in that allied unit from each character in the attacking unit, but I think it functionally does the same thing. So really, it's only the buff to Protective Wards. fine. Fine. Yeah. C3PO and R2D2. So those of you that watch my live stream, when I first read through all these things, C3PO and R2D2 are right at the end, and I just couldn't so much has changed on these cards, it's ridiculous. So they've gone from a 4 points cost to a 3 points cost, which is really, really impactful, but we'll talk about that at the end. Okay. Brilliant Oration. So this used to cost a force, and now it doesn't. And it used to be choose an allied Ewok support. That's right, these are Ewoks, even though they're rebels. That's why they're in with the Ewoks. Choose an allied Ewok support within 4. The chosen character may hunker, double heal, or make a 5 dice attack. Now it's choose an Ewok supporting character within 4, and it can dash, double heal, gain hunker, or make a 5 dice attack. So added the option to dash, and then one character in this unit can do the same thing. So, and it's free. So you're just passing out a dash for someone, potentially, or a heal, or a hunger, or a 5 dice attack, and then getting to do it for yourself as well, which is pretty good. R2, I'm not sure that's such a good idea, a reaction, used to be when an allied Ewok unit or an allied Rebel Alliance unit begins its activation within 5, this unit may use this ability. The activating unit can remove any number of conditions on itself. Then the unit suffers damage for each condition it removed after the first, which is like a really bad ability. Do you really want to clear a strain and take 1 instead of 3? I guess you can do this. Whereas now, okay, they've removed the range to 4, but it's just heal a condition. None of this damage nonsense. Just you're within 4 of R2 and C3PO, you can just remove a condition. No longer really fits the name of the ability, does it? Because it is a good idea, right? There's no downside. But yeah, it was a pointless ability before. And then you got Divine Influence, which is the other passive. So this used to be, I've only shown the against my programming side, which is the C3PO side. This is one of those rare non-primaries that has 2 sides. One represents C3PO, one represents R2D2. That's what this is about. While this unit's active stance is against my programming, so the C3PO side, it used to be Ewok Scouts have within 4 have scale, okay? And then on the other side, it used to be, while this active stance is angry trilling, Ewok warrior units within 4 have steadfast. Now it's just Ewoks, right? And not only that, but instead of just have scale, the units have scale, and allied Ewok characters within 5 can climb even while they're engaged. So essentially, it's a very long-winded way of saying effectively you have jump, right, as well as scale. And then on angry trilling, it's still steadfast, but the bubble's gone up from 4 to 5 again, and again it's just all Ewoks, not just Ewok warriors. And this is really, 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 really very impactful because of the not Ewoks list that we'll talk about at the end, right? Yeah. Last thing I want to talk about before I go into some lists is just Obi-Wan Kenobi out of hiding. Not really a rebel. He's a Force user and a Jedi, and those are his only tags. But he has an orange card banner, so we'll stick him with the rebels, okay? He had Mind Trick as an ability. It was really bad. Not really. It was really awesome, but it was really bad to play against, okay? Kind of similar to Jango Fett, where Jango Fett just had one ability that upset people. This was another ability that just kind of upset people. So as a reaction, it used to cost 2 force. When an allied character within 3 is targeted by an attack, you can use the ability, the attack ends. If it's the attacker's activation, they can make another attack targeting a different character. If they do, you remove 2 dice from the attack roll. So it's just 2 force to say, no, you don't do that. And as someone that's tried approaching Obi-Wan Kenobi out of hiding by just going, cool, well, I'll just hit him. And every time I hit him, my opponent will spend 2 force, and then eventually they'll run out of force. It's like, no, the opponent, if they're running Obi-Wan, they've probably had ways of getting the force back, because they weren't that fussed, right? Now it only costs 1 force, but it's just if you attack a character, within 5, an allied character, you spend the force and you gain disarm, but only if you don't have disarm. You can't use it to do a sneaky damage. Obi-Wan Kenobi's in a rough spot because he's still pretty good actually, but I think when you've got a character with no synergy with anything, he has to be borderline broken to get taken in lists where you could otherwise take something that's buffing up the rest of your list. But he's not bad. He's just like, I'm not sure when you're going to consider him, Interesting one. So my analysis, listen, the only core Rebels change is really Luke Skywalker. If you play the breadth of Rebels and you're not like an Ewok player, right? Because Ewok's like this weird little micro faction inside. Then you've got Luke Skywalker buffs and that's it. A few folks who've played Luke say it's not particularly impactful. Luke should feel like Darth Vader on the tabletop. Not in the same way they play the same way, but they should have that much of an impact on the game, right? And Luke, I guess, doesn't feel that way to a lot of people. But I personally have never played it, so I'm just parroting what I've heard. If you've played with the new Luke Skywalker, let me know your analysis down below, right? Then you've got the Ewoks, and you kind of say this is analogous to the Inquisitorius stuff, right? So Empire also got a micro tag, and the micro tag got buffed. But the Ewoks buffs have an interesting niche to them. I'm still not sure that just putting down all the Ewok models on the table is actually good still. What's really impactful, I think, is C-3PO and R2-D2. They go down to 3 points, which means that you can run them with Freedom Fighter Leia, who's a 7-point primary, and the thing Freedom Fighter Leia does, she gives all the Rebel Alliance characters in your list the Ewok tag, right? So we just read C-3PO's card. He used to care about whether you were a hunter, a scout, or a warrior, and all this. He doesn't. He just cares about the Ewok tag, which is the tag that Freedom Fighter Leia just hands out to any Rebel. So now you make a list that's possibly it's Freedom Fighter Leia, it's C-3PO. Maybe you make your primary on the other side, Lord Grey, or maybe Chief Chirper, like depending on which one you think is better. And then you just take like Rebel Commandos, and other Rebel things that you think are good. Ezra, I don't know, or Chewie, whatever, 4-point support you fancy over there. And then maybe the Rebel Pathfinders, And it's not really Ewoks, but I think it is a weird and powerful list. And it's not thematic, right? It is representative. If you're just happy to kind of handwave the fact that the Pathfinders are, they're just more commandos, right? They look very visually similar. You got Rebel troops, you got Leia, you got Chewie. Not sure where Han's wandered off to, but fine. You got an Ewok guide scout helping them, and it's just part of the Rebels advance on Endor. But it's just the humans rather than the bears. But they all count as Ewoks, and they're all getting all these mad buffs from C-3PO. And then the Ewok they brought with them is also getting all these buffs. I think that could be a good list. But it's not really. If your thing is I want to play the teddy bears because you love the teddy bears, that list has gotten better, but I don't think it's really, really powerful. Still beat me, don't get me wrong. I've got a friend who plays Ewoks and beat me with pure Ewoks already. So it's I'm not saying this from my point of view as a player. I'm just saying in the grand tableau of what's hot and what's not, I don't think it's good enough compared to some of the other things people love. Yeah. And then the Obi-2 change, I think, is a weird one. It puts him in a very weird place. He's still good. He's fine. He's good. But like I said, he's a secondary now with 0 synergy. So where are you putting him? It's not me saying they shouldn't have changed it. His previous ability was really upsetting and toxic. He's in a weird place. That's it. That was a lot. That's 2 of these videos we've done now. So now we've had, because I know I did the Separatist tag review. I did a Dathomirian tag review. I think I did the Bounty Hunters tag review, and then it was like, oh, they're going to do a balance change, so I held off. Now that we've had the balance change, I might well go back and do like Rebels or Republic or Empire and do the whole faction. And the reason I want to do those videos is so that then I can meaningfully talk about Shatterpoint news when it comes out in the same way that I do for Kill Team news, right? But I feel like I will probably try and do the Rebels tag list next, because I think the next thing we're going to get spoiled and previewed, I should say previewed, I hate the use of the word spoil in that term, in that way, but the next thing we're going to get previewed is the other Rogue One box, and so if I feel like I've talked about everything, I can then talk about the new thing and refer to the previous thing and build up this canon of knowledge, right, which isn't a thing in Kill Team, which is the other game I talk about, where you talk about each team like atomically because it's its own thing. But in Shatterpoint, you kind of need to have your thoughts about everything out there, so when a new thing comes out, the audience understands how it slots into what you think about all the other things. At least in my mind, that's how it works. So I want to get through those big tag reviews, so feel like I've done that, so that I can talk about news for Shatterpoint, basically. Important. In going through the Empire and in going through the Rebel Alliance, have I missed or glossed over any changes that you feel are particularly impactful, or have I said something really dumb? And if you're a Rebels or an Empire player, what are you excited to get onto the table? I mean, the answer's only the two things here that generate excitement are Inquisition and Ewoks. So, and I've tried to give you a couple of lists for both of those things that I think would be fun. As someone that plays neither of them, I have dipped my toe into Rebels. I got the Andor box. I got the Death Star Escape box. I guess this has made it marginally more likely that I pick up the Luke Skywalker box at some point along the line. I mean, Luke Skywalker is really cool. He's Luke Skywalker. He's the guy, right? I might pick up that box one of these days. Who can say? Who can say? Yeah. I want to say thank you to all my members, subscribers, and supporters, especially people who are watching this, wondering when I get the next Kill Team video. There will be more Kill Team videos. Don't worry about it. I want to send a special thanks to Nightfall and to Sam Troth, who support me at the highest possible levels. Especially want to thank them because I know neither of them care about Shatterpoint, but maybe that can change if I make enough of these videos and they find my words persuasive and they go, well, Darth Vader's kind of cool. Pick up the box, play some games. Oh, it's really good. Who can say? Who can say? We'll leave it there. See you next time. Cheery, cheery, cheery. Bye. Bye, 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 bye.